God's message to us this morning is from the life of David and the Psalms of David, 1 Samuel chapter 17. Last Sunday, David and Goliath, part 1, Champions Chosen. And today, part 2 of David and Goliath, Champions Do Battle. We return to the valley of Elah, the battlefield setting where armies of the Philistines and the Israelites are encamped, facing each other, preparing for battle. There's no mention in the text, but it's supposed that there are maybe 5,000 or so men on each side. And we will continue to follow the three main, very contrasting characters: Goliath, Saul, and David, and the main event, the battle. Goliath, the Philistines' champion, 9.5 feet tall, a massive warrior, massively armed with helmet, armor, spear, javelin, sword, shield, all of unheard of scale and proportion, who was skilled at boasting, intimidating, cursing in defiance of Israel, Israel's army, Israel's fearful, cowering king, and Israel's God, Yahweh. And today, in our passage, he will boast of making a banquet for the birds and wild animals of the flesh of Yahweh's chosen champion, the young shepherd musician from Bethlehem. Morning and evening, twice a day, for 40 days straight, 80 times together, he's made his boasts and his taunts and threats and defiant, goading demands to do battle one-on-one with Israel's champion, with Israel's God. But he will not as much even lift his sword today. Rather, he'll be beheaded by it. His flesh becoming that very banquet that he predicted. Saul, the finest physical specimen of a man and warrior in all of Israel, the people's choice for their first ever king, has now disqualified himself through self-reliance and willful disobedience to Yahweh's word given through the prophet Samuel. Once possessing the Spirit of God, that Spirit has been removed by God and replaced by an evil spirit, a demon given by God. He's been tormented day and night by that spirit for quite some time now. His only relief, his only respite, soothing praise, worship played and sung by a skilled musician and shepherd from Bethlehem. Saul is beside himself, out of his mind, afraid, and a cowering shell of a king and a failed leader. David, still a youth, a young man, late teens perhaps, the obedient son of his father, a good, faithful shepherd and brave protector of his father's sheep, a poet, musician, skilled at playing and singing, a true worshiper of Yahweh. His reputation as a skilled warrior, a man of valor, a musician, with prudent speech and good appearance, summed up by one as the Lord is with him. He's been walking back and forth between home in Bethlehem and either the royal residence or the valley of Elah. And God has been preparing him for God's chosen purpose. The main event, the battle, Saul's, Israel's, David's. And this morning I would like to think it's about ours, our battles. The battle The fear of man versus the fear of God and faith in God. The fear of circumstance, hardship, trial, temptation, the lust of the flesh, affliction, pain, suffering, sickness, disease, tests and surgeries and procedures, heartache, loneliness, betrayal, loss, grief, death and dying, versus the fear of God and faith in God. This is every man's and every woman's battle. Everyone here has, is, or will be engaged in hand-to-hand combat, in battle. And our big idea of our sermon this morning is the most obvious one to me in any sermon that I have ever preached. And it's this: you'll never forget it. The battle is the Lord's. The battle is the Lord's. It's not Saul's, not Israel's, not even David's. It is the Lord's battle from first to last. Every part of every battle is the Lord's to fight and to win through us, with the outcome to always be to His glory and to our good. And in this particular battle, the first of many battles that David will fight, it would not be smooth sailing. There would be some bumps. I've chosen to call them hurdles. You'll see why at the end. Some hurdles on the way to the battle. 3 in particular that I will name on the way through our walk through the passage today in 1 Samuel 17. David will discover that Saul had issued a bribe to find a champion amongst the men of Israel. And because of it, there was a pervasive disease of sin throughout the camp of the army of Israel. A sinful disease that featured worldly temptation, personal and family wealth, a beautiful woman and an entrance to the royal family, fame and position of prestige and influence. You see, Saul's bribe was all of the leadership and example and motivation that he could provide, to appeal to the lust of the eyes and the lust of the flesh and the pride of life, because he himself found no proper motivation, godly motivation to fight, nor he could offer anyone else that motivation. David will face some harsh criticism and accusations regarding his motives. From where? From his family, from big brother Eliab, that he will need to overcome. And Saul himself, face to face with David, will present an obstacle, a hurdle for David to overcome. And as we follow through together this passage, I want you to hear and think about this. We don't work or fight for God, but by faith, we allow God to work and fight through us. We don't work for God or fight for God, but by faith, we ask God, we allow God to work and to fight for us and through us. And no matter how many times I say today that David was God's chosen champion, I want you to know this, that Yahweh, the Lord Christ, was David's champion and is our champion and is the only champion. To the text, long and full of detail. Starting in verse 13, and I will kind of skim through this first part all the way through verse 23 just to help update the scene, the setting. David's three oldest brothers had joined Saul on the battlefield. David, the youngest, was Jesse's delivery boy to bring supplies, food and cheese and other necessities to the brothers as well as to the brothers' commanders. Verse 17, Jesse said to David, "Take for your brothers about 22 quarts of this parched grain and these loaves and carry them quickly, 15 miles quickly to the camp of your brothers and see if they're well and bring something back from them." And now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah fighting, the text says. Well, can I explain what you already know? There was no fighting going on. There was a lot of forming up into battle formations, posturing and posing and shouting war cries on both sides. Oh, they were gathered to be at war with the Philistines. So David went on his errand, his journey. He left the things that he had brought in charge, verse 22, with the keeper of the baggage, and he went and he greeted his brothers, and as he talked to his brothers, behold, the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, came up out of the ranks and spoke these same words that he had done 80 times before. And David heard him, probably for the first time. And David is perplexed because David encounters the king's bribe being the talk of the camp. And David investigates to understand and to verify what he is hearing as political and military and a spiritual crisis that exists at Elah, where fear dominates. And all the men of Israel, when they saw Goliath, they fled from him, and they were much afraid. And the men of Israel said, "Have you seen this man who's come up? Surely he's come up to defy Israel. And the king will enrich the man who kills him with great riches, and will give him his daughter and make his father's house free in Israel. The king has promised great wealth, a prince's bride, so someone can enter into the house of Saul's royal family, and no tax burden for an entire family." And David said to the men who stood by him, What shall be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? And the people answered him in the same way, "So it shall be done to the man who kills him." So important to see how this offer, this bribe, this motivation that Saul offers 5,000 men that no one even takes up for fear. How this motivates David. You see, he was not interested in anything that Saul offered, but he was interested in the offer itself because he saw so plainly how it missed the true heart of the matter. David's concern is that the unbelieving, blaspheming, uncircumcised champion of the Philistines is defying the armies of the living God and the living God himself. And who will defend and fight for the honor and glory of that one true God? And why will not the king or everyone or anyone fight for God's honor? David needs to know. He needs to verify that, in fact, there is no one else to be champion. Meaning that he must be the one. Now he sees the connection, the anointing, the preparation. I've been chosen to be Israel's champion. Hurdle number 1, a brother's jealousy. Watch what David says and what David does. Verse 28, now Eliab, his eldest brother, heard when he, David, spoke to the men about these matters that David was very fixed upon. And Eliab's anger was kindled against David, and he said, why have you come down? With whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your presumption and the evil in your heart. For you've come down to be a voyeur, to see the battle. And David said, what have I done now? Evidently, he's had this sort of relationship with Big Brother. What have I done now? Wasn't it just a word? Eliab angrily accuses David of pride and evil motives in abandoning sheep. Lie. Coming only to watch the battle. He was sent by Jesse, our dad. And the phrase, was it not just a word? I only spoke a word. I just asked a question. Why are you attacking me? I haven't done anything wrong. Verse 30. And David turned away from Eliab. He just walked away. He didn't engage. He wouldn't be distracted. He would not be felled by this hurdle in his pursuit of the battle. He turned away from him toward another, and they spoke in the same way. And the people answered him still again as before. Hurdle number 2. A king's refusal. David makes a defense and a plea, as we'll see, verse 31. When the words that David spoke, this constant questioning of this offer, this bribe, when the words that David spoke were heard, they repeated them before Saul, and Saul, sent for him, David. And David said to Saul, let no man's heart fail because of him, Goliath, the champion. Your servant I will go and fight with this Philistine. And here's the hurdle. Saul said to David, you're not able to go against the Philistine to fight with him, for you're but a youth. And he's been a man of war from his youth. And David didn't walk away from this hurdle. David leaps this hurdle, verse 34. David said to Saul, "Your servant, I used to keep sheep for my father. And when there came a lion or a bear and he took the lamb from the flock, I went after him and I struck him and I delivered it out of his mouth. And if he arose against me, I caught him by his beard and I struck him and I killed him with my bare hands. Your servant has struck down both lions and bears, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be like one of them, for he has defied the armies of the living God." And David said, "The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." And Saul, in perhaps the only rational thing he has thought and said for months, says to David, "Go, and the Lord be with you." But puts up hurdle number 3, a king's help, which was no help at all, which David will respectfully try, but then will refuse, because the king's help was a crippling hindrance. Verse 38, "Then Saul clothed David with his armor. And he put a helmet of bronze on his head, and he clothed him with a coat of mail. And David strapped his sword, Saul's sword, over his armor, and he tried in vain to even get up and move, to go. For he'd not tested them, tried them, proven them to be useful. And David said to Saul, "I cannot go with these, for I have not tested them." And here's how David leaps over this hurdle. David put them off. David's race to the battle continues. As a shepherd arms for a champion's battle, David leaps the same hurdle by both putting off one means of defense and offense and putting on another means, the shepherd's means, instead of the king's means. Verse 40. And David took his staff, his shepherd's staff, in one hand, and then walked towards the center of the battlefield. Evidently, even today, there's still a ravine there where once a stream or a brook flowed. And David walked into and across that brook, and he chose 5 smooth stones from the brook, and he put them in his shepherd's pouch. And then his sling was in the other hand from his shepherd's staff, and he was armed and ready to go to battle. And he approached. He made the first move to the Philistine. And so finally here, the two champions emerge and they meet. Verse 41, "And the Philistine moved forward and came near to David with his shield bearer in front of him. And when the Philistine, Goliath, looked and he saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth, ruddy and handsome in appearance. And the Philistine said to David, 'Am I a dog that you come to me with that stick?'" What is that? A shepherd's staff? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. The Philistine said to David, "Come to me, and I'll give your flesh to the birds of the air and to the beasts of the field." And David said to the Philistine, "You come to me with a sword and with a spear and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you've defied. And this day, today, right now, in a moment, the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. And I will give the dead bodies of the hosts, the armies of the Philistines, this day, today, to the birds of the air and to the wild beasts of the earth." Here's why. That all the earth may know that there's a God in Israel, and that all this assembly, the Israelites and the Philistines, may know that the Lord saves not with a sword and a spear. For what the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hand. We've read it twice now. I've prayed it. Now let's make sure that its truth pours over us and washes us and fills us. Because why? Because the battle is the Lord's. Your battle is the Lord's. What is your battle right now? It is the Lord's. He will fight, and he will win it by faith as you ask God and allow God and obey God to work and fight for you and through you. Verse 48. Instead of blow-by-blow account, I call it a blow-by-no-blow account of the actual battle. When the Philistine arose and came and drew near to meet David, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet the Philistine. And David put his hand in his bag, and he took out a stone, and he slung it. Yes, the past tense of sling is to slung or have slung or something. And here's how he slung it. Don't miss this. With practiced, skillful, lethal precision. He had been prepared by God in every necessary physical and spiritual way. And it struck the Philistine on his forehead. It had to go over the shield just enough to maintain philosophy to hit David's intentional target, the one place where it would fell and kill the champion. David then, where was that? The stone sank into his forehead and he fell on his face to the ground. David, champion of Israel, finishes the champion's mission in verse 50. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone, and struck the Philistine and killed him. There was no sword in the hand of David. But David ran, and he stood over the Philistine, and he took his sword. How big, how massively heavy. And he drew it out of its sheath. And he wielded it, and he killed him. and he cut off his head with it. And the aftermath of the battle unfolds. About 5,000 Israelite cowards turn vocal and brave. And they chase away the already fleeing enemy. And Yahweh gives them undeserved military victory and spoils. Why? Because of his grace and because of the faith and faithfulness of his chosen champion. And when the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they fled. And the men of Israel and Judah rose with a shout and pursued the Philistines as far as Gath and the gates of Ekron, so that the wounded Philistines fell on the way from Sha'raim as far as Gath and Ekron. And the people of Israel came back from chasing the Philistines, and they plundered their camp. And David took his plunder, took the head of the Philistine, Goliath, the champion, and he brought it to Jerusalem. Not today to talk about. But he put his armor, Goliath's armor, in his own tent. And back in the king's tent, chapter 17, verses 55 through 58, you can read that if you wish, but I will pick up on it another time as the lead-in to 1 Samuel chapter 18. And yes, it will be a while before I'm back and David's back, but you can read ahead. You can read all the way through 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, 1 Chronicles. It'd be delightful. Read all the Psalms. That'd be wonderful. As we did last week, I would like to close in a moment by standing together and reading a portion of a Psalm of David, Psalm 18, that David wrote much later than this episode, this first battle at the valley of Elah. It's to the choir master of Psalm of David, the servant of the Lord, who addressed the words of this song to the Lord on the day when the Lord delivered him from the hand of all of his enemies and from the hands of Saul in particular. And then David wrote this psalm. And as I said even last week, Elah, Goliath, that battle is in David's, obviously, memory and heart etched forever. And I think it echoes even in this chapter, this psalm that David wrote. So Psalm 18, and then if you would stand, follow along as I read, and then you will continue to stay standing, and the musicians will have made their way when they get over the shock of my being done 5 minutes early. They'll make their way and they'll come up and they will lead us in that last closing song. We're going to start in verse 28, and I'll read through the end. Remember Hurdle. For it's you, O Lord, who light my lamp. The Lord my God lightens my darkness, for by you I can run against a troop, a military troop. And by my God I can leap over a hurdle. I can leap over a wall. This God, his way is perfect. The word of the Lord proves true. He's a shield for all those who take refuge in him. For who is God but Yahweh? And who is a rock except our God? the God who equipped me with strength and made my way blameless. He made my feet like the feet of a deer, and he set me secure on the heights. He trains my hands for war, so that my arms can bend a bow of bronze, so my arms can sling a stone. You've given me the shield of your salvation, and your right hand supported me, and your gentleness made me great. You gave a wide place for my steps under me, and my feet did not slip. I pursued my enemies, and I overtook them, and I did not turn back until they were consumed. I thrust him through, so that they were not able to rise, and he fell under my feet, for you equipped me with strength for the battle. You made those who rise against me sink under me. You made my enemies turn their backs to me, and those who hated me I destroyed. They cried for help, but there was none to save. They cried to the Lord, but he did not answer them. I beat them fine as dust before the wind. I cast them out like the mire of the streets. You delivered me from strife with the people. You made me the head of the nations. He's king now, when he writes, people whom I had not known served me, and as soon as they heard of me, they obeyed me. Foreigners came cringing to me. Foreigners lost heart and came trembling out of their fortresses. The Lord lives, and blessed be my rock, and exalted be the God of my salvation, the God who gave me vengeance and subdued peoples under me, who rescued me from my enemies. Yes, you exalted me above those who rose against me. You delivered me from the man of violence, that Philistine champion. For this I will praise you, O Lord, among the nations, and sing to your name. Great salvation he brings to his king, and shows steadfast love to his anointed, to David and his offspring forever. The battle is the Lord's.